Hi, Yes But Why listeners. This is your host, Amy Jordan. I just got back from Podfest Multimedia Expo in Orlando, Florida. I was invited to attend by festival founder Kris Krimitsos when we met at the Outlier Podcast Festival in Austin. Kris saw me teach an improv workshop to podcasters, and he asked me to sprinkle my pixie dust at Podfest this year. I had a great time with Kris, helping him to make the Podfest community feel welcomed and loved. It was my honor to come to Orlando to support Kris and his team. But I didn't just dance and sing and yell supportive phrases into the mic the whole time. I also listened to some amazing speakers teach how to make your podcast better. In one session with speaker Lee Silverstein, he urged us to examine why we do our podcasts. Lee even suggested we check out the book Start With Why: How Great Leaders Inspire Everyone to Take Action. I checked it out, and that book is available on Audible. Since this and every episode of Yes But Why is sponsored by Audible, I urge you to go check out what books you can find to better yourself. Get your free audiobook download and your 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/yesbutwhy. After soaking up all the podcasting education I could do, I snagged a few of my fellow Podfest attendees to interview. I recorded in the nooks and crannies of the Orlando World Center Marriott. I talked to Trenton Bennett, Kimbrough, Merlyne Jean-Louis, Kris Keppeler, and Harry Duran. And I'm sure the future will hold lots more interviews with Podfest podcasters. I had so much fun at Podfest 2020, and I'm very excited to share this episode with you now. Enjoy! I'm Amy Jordan, and this is Yes But Why Podcast. Yeah! Thank you, Trenton Bennett, for being on the podcast with me. I really appreciate you chatting to me in the midst of the wildness that is Podfest.
Gladly, Amy. Thanks. Thanks for the invite.
Absolutely. So you are working as a voice actor and podcaster. Mm-hmm. Tell me, what inspired you to get into the performing arts?
Well, I dabbled off and on, and throughout my 20s and 30s, I feel like I made the mistake of trying to discount myself and say, oh, that's not for me, I couldn't do that. Even though everyone around me was like, you're really good at this. I would get a random little gig here, like I did voiceover for local commercials, I did funny voices for cable TV, and it was nothing that was career-like. It was just in addition to and a fun thing on the side. But I hit my 40s, and I realized, you know what? This really is something I ought to get into. Technology has moved forward enough, and I got lucky enough to meet David H. Lawrence XVII, who is a coach who runs a site called VO Heroes. That's a site with a whole bunch of people who can teach you. And to me, I think the big thing getting into it was, with all the theater background and other stuff going on, once you make that leap into voiceover, you need professional training, mentoring, and coaching. And all three of those were kind of rolled into the VO Heroes site. So I took the plunge and went ahead and jumped into that and make myself do it. Make myself do the regular coaching and workouts and not just hang around and wait to record.
Wow, that's really awesome that resource was there for you to get you going. You said you got sort of a kick in the butt. Tell me, what sort of led you to the kick in the butt? Was it like, you said no to a gig and it turned out to be great, or you were going to quit and someone said, but you're great at it? What gave you the inspiration to continue?
People love the technology stuff I was doing as my day job, and we reached a point where when I was teaching technology and I needed to start getting microphones and good equipment and trying to pay attention to the quality of the sound and edit the videos, I'm like, this needs to go on the road. I need to take this somewhere to another level. And I started looking, and I ran across David, and I was very pleased with how open he was and how he gave me the time of day. And the first thing he said to me was, okay, well, based on what you're telling me, go get some acting lessons. Then come back. And I thought, okay, this is good, because I was expecting the first thing to be, well, write me a check and then we'll talk about it after the money. No, So everybody in the voiceover business is really open and supportive and helpful. And for me, that was kind of my kick in the butt, is I'm like, here it is. It's a professional thing. I can do it. Here's the professional training I'll need for the business side and all of that. And at the same time, I said to my wife, I want to give this a try, and I think this is a real thing with the professional coaching I need. And her immediate response was, I'm just surprised you haven't done this 20 years sooner.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah, she's awesome. Totally supportive.
Man. And wild that it was like clearly your path and she was just waiting for you to take it. Like, that's really great.
Yep.
Oh, man, it's nice to have support around when you're trying to, get yourself going, especially in sort of acting or, presenting in any way. Tell me about the acting classes that you took. How did they help you to be a better voice actor?
Well, I'd already had theater in college, and I'd already done a couple of little plays. So what happened was I said, okay, I need to get more immersion. And I started trying to find local acting classes, and I had troubles getting anybody to give me the time of day or say, yes, we have a structured class. But a friend of mine who had been in the theater for a long time got me into a local production. And the fun part about this, Amy, was that he said, I got you a role. It's a little role, but it's in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying at a community theater. And by the way, that's a musical. So I thought, I've spent almost no time on stage, and I've never sung on stage. What am I going to do? So I was really nervous.
Gosh. Yeah. Man, so you did it, huh?
I not only did it, but I showed up at the first rehearsal with the director. There was a music director and a show director. And I said, look, I've never tried this before, so feel free to tell me if my singing voice is doo-doo. It's okay. I can take it. So I get up there and I start singing, and she just looks at me, waves her hand, and says, oh my gosh, your voice is fine. You'll be okay. I'm like, that's the highest praise I could have hoped for.
Oh, that's so funny. Your voice is just fine.
And I ended up being in one of the major numbers where a supporting character sings a whole song about how he spent his whole life in the mailroom and he just likes it there. So I'm duetting with the lead, and I'm thrilled.
Wow!
It was
so
great.
You really loved that stage experience, huh? Have you
Yes.
continued to do local theater to stay connected to that crowd?
I wanted to, but at the time I was living in Kentucky, and I had plans to move to Florida to be closer to my parents. I'm an
Okay.
only child, and they're getting older, so I need to be there for them.
Sure.
So I had to bid them a fond farewell, and when I came down here, everything was about building a voiceover career, and that's very time-consuming. So it's harder for me to commit to a play and all the rehearsals and everything that entails if I'm a businessman who's growing a business and I'm still building that career and that client base, and I'm working a full-time job to pay the bills and put my kid through college.
Yeah, absolutely. That is hard. So you're doing this full-time, but you also have a secondary job that you work as well, like a 9-to-5, as it were?
Correct.
Oh, wow. See, I think that's really important to note. I think a lot of times when people are, hearing about, this guy does voice acting, they think, well, that's just your job forever. It's paying for everything.
Yeah.
No, audience. Everyone needs to, split their time. If you want to do this kind of stuff, it doesn't always pay all the bills. It'd be great if it did, but oftentimes you have to have another thing, and that doesn't make it less than, right?
Exactly.
It is as important for you to accomplish the job that you're doing in the 9-to-5. Those people need you as much as the voice acting needs you. So are you still doing educational videos? You mentioned that you were starting to do sort of educational stuff, and that the voice acting for yourself led into doing the work to show them how to do it. Now, are you still teaching classes and presenting that to people?
Yes and no. It's funny because the one thing I do want to mention real quick to anybody thinking of getting into voiceover, just as you've said, it is a career arc that takes a while. One of my favorite bits of advice from David was, it's a marathon, not a sprint. And I have to remind myself of that when I get eager to move to the next step, and maybe I'm not ready for that. It takes everybody in this business years to get where they need to go, and that's okay. You build, you learn, you build some more. So to answer your question about the videos, I do training for people online. I've got a really good voice. So in the 9-to-5 job, when it comes to the tech, I help do presentations and such. But then on the YouTube channel, I did a quick explainer video and I just got addicted. So I'm going to start building more content because that video took off. I had already taken some classes in the mechanics of this. I know about how to set up 3-point lighting, how to do really good captures with a web camera, how to position yourself, all of that. So the videos will look better even though it's just me sitting in my studio talking. But they'll sound really good because that's kind of important.
Yeah, that's really important information for people. I know a lot of people, especially that don't live in like New York or LA, who do a lot of filming themselves for auditions at their own home. So your videos would be really helpful to them so that when they're putting it out there, you know, the people that are looking will be like, oh, look at this professional video. I like this guy. Let's put him in the role, right?
Exactly. And along those lines, folks need to understand, I've got really nice professional video equipment and other stuff that I can use, but I don't have to. A lot of people audition using an iPad or an iPhone, the camera in their mobile phone. I actually have a Windows phone that I keep because it had a magnificent video camera, and I put that on a tripod and use that to shoot my stuff.
Wow. That's really great. I mean, you really can use, you know, whatever you end up feeling comfortable with. Yeah, and that's the key. Before we started recording, we were kind of talking about how technology can be wild and really, you know, there's so much coming out and it's changing all the time. I personally, since I am terrible with technology, say find something that you feel comfortable with and go with it. There's a lot of tough things out there. So if you can find a camera that does what you want and it's like, I know how to run this, don't worry about trying to buy the $1,000 camera because you think you have to. Do you know what buttons to push on that? Probably not.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oof, man. So as we discuss, you know, we're talking about all these life things that we're learning, and clearly you're very educational. You want to teach other people, help other people, and that's really great. But for yourself, like, what do you do to keep yourself going? It's an uphill battle all the time. You are putting stuff out there to help other people, but you also need to build your own business. How is it that you are keeping yourself going, you know, when times are tough?
There are so many people in voiceover who are supportive and helpful, and I'm in a lot of different groups where I'll go out there if I need help figuring out the next step, but I'll also go to groups where they'll support me. I'm able to say, hey, I want to be accountable to you guys. I'm going to do this. Or I've got this business plan on how to grow prospective clients. What do you guys think? And I'll get their opinions. In the meantime, though, one of my favorite audiobook narrators, Matt Haynes, he and I have a regular accountability call, and each of us look at it and say, we have items we need to take action on this week, and we'll be accountable to each other so that we can say, look, I'm reckoning my progress and making sure something happens.
So it's good to have a friend to be accountable to chat with, and hold yourself to the goals that you have.
Yes.
Yeah, that's really hard. I mean, absolutely. Now I'm like, I want one of those. You know, I need somebody to tell me, get it done. What are you doing? Why aren't you doing that? Man, that is really wonderful. Do you have any final thoughts for the listeners of the podcast about what they should do to, you know, start their own careers in performing or podcasting or voiceovers?
Well, I do like Chris Krimitsos' Start Ugly book where he says just go. Mm-hmm. And one of the things along those lines I want to mention is there's a podcast called Voiceover Body Shop. It's Dan Leonard and George Whittam. They're techies. And it's VOBS.TV for anybody who's curious. But in that, they were making this statement that I thought really encapsulated what someone starting out should do. Don't get wrapped around the axle about the technology. Don't feel like, okay, well, now I need to go ahead and have a MacBook Pro, and I've got to have a special studio, and I've got to have an Apollo Twin Mark II Duo, and it's all got to be connected, and I've got to know all the tech and know how to run this equipment. You don't. Start off small. And these guys even said on a recent podcast, look, this stuff is if you're an audio engineer already or you're just a nerd that likes to play with tech. But most of you, especially if you're just doing audiobooks, you don't have to worry about going that deep into the technology. Start off simple, do the basics that you can do, learn from those lessons, and then just iterate and improve upon it as you go.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thank you, Trenton Bennett, for being on this podcast, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with me at Podfest 2020.
Thanks, Amy. Really glad to be here, and best of luck to you, and yes, but why?
The most interesting thing right now is I'm putting together a book proposal I have a writing producing partner. So we're always looking for true life stories. And this one came to us through our managers who manage someone that's a motivational speaker. And amazing story. She has kidnapped into sexual drug, trafficking and drugs when she was 11. And she got out of it, and now she's an advocate, for children that are in these situations to get them out, and she's changed laws. It's just an amazing story, what she went through. Yeah. So we're doing a deal with her to hopefully, get it to be in a book. We've got a couple of publishers interested, and we see it as a film too. I mean, this is like Oscar-worthy kind of story. Yeah. So it's fun to get it that early and be with the project all the way through. So I'm really excited about that one.
Cool. So are you then part of the producing team to put it together? Do you find the writers to do the ghostwriting, or is she writing something and then you're setting up the editing? It sounds like you have a whole business group together that are putting these projects together, but how do you even get to be in a group that produces projects?
So it's my partner and I, so there's just two of us.
And you talk well to make it sound like 50 people.
We each pretend that we're 50 people.
I love it.
Together we're 100 that could do this, but it starts with just the idea. Yeah. So you have to find that story, but we also came together as partners with a lot of experience, so that's why it can work. He has a really long producing career, and I have writing. We first originally came together as a writing producing team, and so we can do it all, but we are doing now the writing, so we're basically, in a way, ghostwriting it, although we have title. I guess if you're not ghostwriting it, your name is going to also be on the book jacket.
Yeah. I feel like if they know you're writing it, it's not so ghosty.
No, it's not so ghosty. But at least we're able to, it's all her story,
sure,
right? And it's sort of our interpretation. I do sometimes feel like we are interpreters to try to get it out. I'm constantly saying I want to do her justice. The story is amazing, and I haven't lived a life like hers, so it's a lot of trying to look at that. So I don't know if sometimes we're more therapists or what. It's funny. So many skills are coming together to do many things in my life that I'm doing right now that I didn't know I was developing those skills long ago, and I'm like, now it makes sense.
Dude, that's so great. Yeah. I love that when something that is a skill of yours you didn't realize you even had pops up, and you're like, wait, I'm good at this? And then it's like, I've been preparing for this my whole life.
Exactly. I feel that way about podcasting.
Oh, yeah.
Because the podcasting stuff I'm doing is fictional podcasting or audio dramas. And 2 years ago, I tried to do an audiobook narration. And, if you narrate, you also produce it. And I did one book, and it's awful. I feel really bad. It's so bad. And I'm like, I can't do this. There's no way I could ever do this. So now I come back to it. Basically all the skills I used then and used badly, I now went, okay, now I get it. Sometimes perspective helps you to say, I need the right equipment. Yeah. I can't cheap out on certain things, and this is where I have to put my money to make it happen. So now I'm like, I'm actually good at it now. But it was because I was so bad at it before that I could be good at it now. Yeah. So it's that not giving up. You can't give up on anything.
Absolutely not. To jump back to your project with the writing, with the writing of the book, so you mentioned that you and your partner, what's your partner's name?
Sharuk.
Mm-hmm. When you and Sharuk got together to work together, you said that you both came with a lot of skills. Where did you start that led you to getting to the producing point? What other jobs had you had, and how did you develop the knowledge to then say, I'm going to help these people get their stories out there?
Right. So, Sharuk came from just working for other producers. So that's a typical way you go in as basically an assistant. Mm-hmm. You do everything from picking up coffee to reading scripts. And so he did that route.
And
you just keep going and you become like an associate producer. You can work your way up to being a co-producer. And so that's what he did and worked on a lot of projects. He worked for Universal and did even some of the promotional stuff for them. He wrote the Minion books, and he did a lot of things like that.
That's fun.
So I met him through a pitch fest when I was just a screenwriter. But I got into the industry, I went to New York and worked at Simon & Schuster and just the sub-rights, not even the book side, the subsidiary rights department, where they sell it into magazines and paperback. I did that. So it was a good start to understanding the whole big entertainment industry.
Yeah, and publishing.
Yeah, and publishing. And so then I went into an ad agency. And I worked there in the production department. So they produced all the commercials. I did like Quaker Oats and stuff. And then that got me to LA, because if you sort of like production, more happens in LA. And I wanted the better weather than New York City.
Yeah.
And so then I just started doing producing and but starting out like a production assistant. So once again, it's that entry-level position where you're filling the water in the ice chests to helping out in any of the minor producing kind of things that you do for the clients to make clients happy and get a commercial made, and doing the whole logistics of getting everybody and everything to the location to film the commercial.
Yeah.
So I did that for a couple years and decided I was really a writer. I like that part of the business, but I was like, I'm not going to give up on writing. So I got into writing spec scripts, and then I met Shuruk at a pitch fest where you go and speed date basically a bunch of people all day, and we just hit it off, and over the years our relationship just grew to being producing, writing partners together.
Oh, man, that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, one thing that you mentioned that I think is an important thing to note for people who might be listening is the idea that, you know, you did all this work and you were definitely, deep into your field in New York, but when you moved to the other city, you still had to sort of start at the sort of close to the bottom rung and move your way up still, because they're different cities, different industries, and they want you to sort of show that you'll do the tough stuff before you are given the producing jobs and whatnot. I think it's an important thing to recognize that you did it and that you weren't like, I'm too better for this, like I'm not going to be doing this. I hear that a lot. People will, be like, oh, well, I don't want to do that. I'm like, well, then you can't do the job.
You can't.
You have to work your way up
all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like maybe some people would say, I'm not going to write a memoir. I've written a lot of scripts. I've written my own books, fictional books, but some people are, I'm not going to write a book proposal for someone, because it very much, you get paid a little bit for it, but it's a lot of on spec. A lot of people are going to want you to be a partner basically in the project, especially Hollywood. Mm-hmm. That happens all the time. They're like, well, wait till let's make something. So writers always have to write for free, and so you can present something to someone and then you get the money and then you get paid, right? So there's a lot of that. So a lot of people, they can't do that. You can't afford to do it for one thing, and in a lot of ways it feels like a step back. You get to a level, it's like, well, I should be paid now. Well, yeah, you should, but sometimes you got to figure out what the gains are. Why? I mean, I wouldn't say do it without saying, well, I know this and this are attached, so the odds of it happening are better. There does come a line in the sand point when you have to decide. But with this project, we shared a manager with the lady that the story is about. So, because she's a motivational speaker. So, and we could see the whole thing. Everybody wants to go to a film. So when you get in on the ground floor, we're not officially attached, because it's hard to sell something if it comes with baggage, just like any life, right? Once again, it's like dating or something. It all is. Yeah. So it's sort of like, yes, everybody wants to do it together, and when you're working with people that you trust, the odds are we will all go down the line together. And so here it's a book proposal, then it's a book, then it's a movie. And of course, we have the skills that were a benefit to the project. And so that's where it comes in handy to have all these years of skills that you didn't know you would need for this one great project.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great that it's all coming together, so you can feel like, all the work I did was the right work. I didn't make any missteps at all. This is perfect.
I know, yeah. Right. Yeah. It's hindsight. You just forget the bad stuff, right?
Absolutely. That's my favorite part.
Yeah, it's like, I knew it all along.
I have a rose-colored memory for sure.
Exactly.
I'll, tell stories, and my husband will you forgot this huge, terrible part of it. And I was all revisionist. It's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
No one cares about that.
Yeah, it's all right. It doesn't make it a good story, does it?
Right. It's based on a true story. Yeah. My whole life is based on a true story.
Exactly. So you mentioned, though, that now you're in your audio drama podcasting world. Or is this your project on your own? And is this where you're putting your creative writing to use?
Exactly. It's always nice to have your own little thing where you're fully in charge. And the thing is, I'm creating something. And when it gets to a level where it is something, I have plenty of people I can pull in and say, hey, I've created this IP. And then everybody I know will want to be involved. But for now, it can just be me, and I can have my creative, fun. And if nothing comes of it, nothing comes of it, but I feel good. It makes me happy. I mean, it's really fun to have something that's purely so many of the other things I do and write, I can only do so much. It can't be produced.
Right.
Unless there's money and a whole crew of people. With an audio drama podcast, I can do it all, and it actually doesn't sound embarrassing for me to do it, right?
Yeah.
I can get it to a certain professional level, which all podcasters, I feel, have that chance and ability that you can't say that about too many other mediums.
It's true. It's true. In a world that's become a lot more solitary, we are looking for, art mediums in which we can sort of take care of it on our own.
Yeah.
Though one of the things I enjoy a lot about this festival, Podfest, is the idea that we don't have to be alone, and that here we can meet friends, so that while we're at home by ourselves doing the thing, we get like a supportive text from our friend that goes like, "You're doing great.
Yeah.
I loved your last episode," or like
everybody needs that. Well, I wouldn't even launch the first episode. I was going to come to this because I'm a total first timer at podcasting of any level. I didn't even listen. I mean, I keep wanting to say watch. It's like, it's listen. You're only listening, but I'm such a newbie that I was
just at a YouTube panel. There's a lot of watching, so don't worry.
Yeah, a lot of watching. Well, and I just thought, well, I'll come and learn, because I know I have to learn a lot, and just by being part of the group that's getting ready to come, and everyone's connected on this app. That's what this Podfest does. That I've never even been to any conference that everybody that was going to the conference could get in touch with each other and meet each other on an app before it.
Yeah.
So to me, the whole feel of this place and what the Podfest is doing is different.
Yeah.
So all the encouragement from the people on that app who were podcasters already saying, just do it. I mean, just do the first one. The first ones are always the first ones. And the most important part is to get started.
Yeah.
So that's why I did the first one, which I would have never done. So I did it like a week and a half ago.
No way.
Yeah. So I've gotten great feedback. I've had over 150 downloads. And,
wow.
And I've learned a lot. I've learned a lot to say I can do this and I can get better, right? I don't expect it to be perfect. So
it's nice that you sort of tried on your own before you came to a place, and then could say okay, I did this. Was this the right way, or what ways could I make my process better? Yeah. And that's really smart. That's really smart. Yeah. I think that's why you continue to move up in production and working, is because you're always seeking to be better. Even just the acknowledgement that skills that you had before came together to help your current project means that you can see outside of yourself in a way that's just so much better than a lot of people. Not everybody can process their own. Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
Important.
You're great.
And maybe that's the writer in me, because you're constantly having to revise things. If I can't step back and look at what I've written and make it better, then I'm not going to be a very good writer.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
I sort of have a thing. I feel like people that are really good writers are outliners too. You don't have to outline first. You could maybe start your story and at some point go, oh, I better step back and go, where am I going? What's happening? You have to have a spark that makes you want to write. And I think if you want to sell stuff, you have to have a good concept. And I always call it a hook. So there has to be some hook, something in your story that makes you go, oh, okay, that's interesting. And you could tell it to someone, they're like, oh, that's interesting. I'd like to hear that. But at some point, if you can't outline, then you can't tell a complete story.
Yeah.
And outline is hard. You've got to step back. And most writers don't like to outline because it isn't simple. It's not fun. You can't just let it go with the flow. You have to actually really think about what you're doing and plot out. You have to have setups and payoffs and all that kind of stuff for writers. So I do feel that, I'm not saying you can't, because there's exceptions to everything.
Yeah.
But if you can outline, it's a skill you can build. You don't have to be a born outliner like you, maybe a born storyteller. But it's a good sign that you at least can step back and look at things, and that might help you in the long run, like you were saying.
Totally. No, I thank you for even saying that, because I feel like every time I'm writing a story, I outline too much.
No.
And so I'm like,
no such thing.
You saying that is validating me in a way that I needed.
No.
So I was like, yay,
You're
okay,
a good writer
great,
in my
I
book.
can do it.
My unofficial book of checklists. Yes, you get a check.
Yeah, absolutely. Can you, just as a final thought in our short chat here, it's not always easy to be a producer. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of years where you're not making a ton of money and you're still trying to make it happen. Even with the podcast, you're doing it all on your own. So I can't imagine when you finish, you're writing yourself a check, right? So,
if
like,
only.
Right, I'm paying myself. Hooray, salary.
Okay, $1 million. I'll take it.
Yeah.
Really.
Thank you, self.
You're so nice to me.
But what do you do to like keep yourself going through the rough times? How do you like keep your head above water when most people are like, we're not going to pay you, good luck getting something going?
Well, you do need that day job, or where for me, I was married and a mom, so I segued full mom world into my career. And luckily I have a husband that believes in me, and he really loves it when I make money.
Yeah.
And it comes sporadically. So whatever, I'm just saying, whatever that is, whatever gig you have to make money, keep it. Keep it for as long as you can and do both. But that does mean you have to manage your time better. And originally what I did was I always was looking for something that said I was advancing. Because, and even if it was like I was taking a class and I was learning something, I had to look every year or every month and say, well, what am I doing to do this? If you're not advancing, for screenwriting, there's a lot of contests you can enter. There's a whole contest world. And I think that's not a bad thing. It's a great way to set a deadline to finish something. But I know writers that's all they ever did was write stuff and enter contests. I'm like, well, that's not a career. So that's a step along the way to a career. So
it's funny how the festivals that you're doing that to tell you that's the way to do it, though.
Well, I'm not
makes sense for them.
Yeah, I'm not saying you can't get somewhere with that. You sure can.
Sure,
and
certainly learn a lot.
And you can learn a lot, and you can use it to network. So, but don't stop then also pitching to actual producers or sending your script out. If all you're doing is one thing, it's probably not a good path to your career. So that. I guess that was. Keep making money however you are currently making money.
Right.
But use your spare time wisely to advance the job you really want or the career and the joy you really want, right?
Yeah.
And look for a way that you're actually advancing it. If you're just writing, like for a writer, if you're just writing the same thing over and over again or rewriting it or the first chapters or whatever, like for me, if I'm not actually putting a podcast out, then I'm not a podcaster, right?
Sure.
So just don't stagnate in whatever that creative venture is you're doing.
Yeah.
See forward movement. And I believe if you don't give up, you will make money because all the others will give up. That's my feeling. Don't give up. You can do it if you don't give up, whatever it is, right?
Totally. I actually say that to people all the time.
Yeah.
I go, hey, man, maybe not a lot of people listen to my podcast right now, but I'm going to keep doing it until they do. Yeah. And then eventually everyone else will have quit.
You might have to pause for a little while you're doing something else. That's okay.
Yeah.
Take your time to... Things come in time. You were even saying, we were talking earlier before this, that it's really is that timing is, you just don't know when the right time is. Just like when you don't know when the skills will all come together.
Yeah.
But just keep building those skills and giving it time and putting stuff out, letting it be judged. It'll happen.
Yeah. I feel like you've solved a couple of my own personal things, so I'm really excited about that. So thank you, Anne Kimbrough, for being on the podcast. I appreciate you being with me, and yay, I look forward to hanging with you more at Podfest.
Me too. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Merlyne Jean-Louis, for being on the podcast. I really appreciate you chatting with me.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Awesome. So we have chatted about the fact that you are an entertainment lawyer. How does a person get into entertainment law?
You first have to go to law school. Step number one.
You have to make through.
Go to college, go to law school.
Yep.
To actually enter into the entertainment industry, there are different ways. The traditional way of going to a big law firm after law school, working there a couple of years, and then maybe going in-house to an entertainment company or a TV studio. But then there's my way.
Okay, let's hear about your way.
I went into law firm. I actually started my own law firm a couple of years after graduating from law school.
Wow.
Which is really not done a lot. And so the reason I started my own law firm was because I used to be a dancer, a non-traditional entertainer, and wanted to cater to that type of person, to a non-traditional entertainer. And when I started doing it, one of my first clients was an influencer, a YouTuber. And I never even thought to myself, oh my gosh, you fit the prototype of the person I'm trying to help. You know, I initially wanted to help dancers.
Sure.
But YouTubers, influencers, bloggers, podcasters actually became my clients as well.
Oh, wow. So what were you inspired to be a lawyer for this group because you had issues when you were a dancer, or you had seen your friends go through things?
Right, so exactly. I used to actually dance with a company and saw how my choreographer, how she was taken advantage of by her manager. And so I thought, oh my gosh, you have rights. You know, you can, like, you don't have to give him all the power, right? You're the person people are coming to see. They're coming to see your work. You have rights. And so I just wanted to educate dancers to basically empower them. I went to law school with the intention of being general counsel for my favorite dance company, Vanelli. And so, I mean, I never thought to myself, oh, I can actually help individual dancers. But now that I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, like, this is what I want to do. This is what I end up doing.
Oh, wow. That's really nice. Thanks. I would say as a group, we artists appreciate you caring because I'm sure there's a lot of people that don't. Yeah. So that's really wonderful.
Thank you.
How have your experience being an entertainment lawyer, have there been any, like experiences that have really confirmed that this was the right move for you, that made you feel like this was your correct path, or just does it feel good on the inside as you do it?
Good question. I feel this is what I was meant to do, right? I've always been interested in the law since I was a kid. I interned in my town attorney's office. I interned at a law firm during college. After college, I worked as a paralegal at a big law firm. So the law was always there. Like, I'm going to be a lawyer.
Yeah, clearly.
But it wasn't until I learned about, this particular type of law, intellectual property and entertainment law. I'm like, okay, I can combine my loves for the arts and the law. And so that's why I chose to go into this career path.
Oh, man. Tell me a little bit about when you were a dancer. Yeah. How did you get involved in that? I mean, like you're saying, you've clearly been sort of focused on the law. How did you even take this side trip into being a dancer?
So I started dancing pretty late when it comes to dancing. I started dancing when I was a teenager.
I was like, so you weren't like 2?
No, I wasn't 2 years old.
Yeah.
I was a teenager.
Yeah.
And there was this dance school in my hometown that like a lot of my classmates went to. But I remember asking my parents, and they didn't want me to do it. They didn't want me to dance. And so it wasn't until I got my first job where I actually had enough money to pay for my dance classes on my own that I started dancing. So my last 2 years of high school, I danced. And I continued to do it during college and continued to do it after college. And that's how I became a dancer.
Oh, man. Did you continue to work as a dancer or, do shows while you were in law school and stuff?
No. Funny story. So I basically stopped dancing semi-professionally when I went to law school.
Oh, okay.
But our school, my law school, had, a variety show every year. So I still end up having, being able to nurture that dance, but, desire somehow.
Oh, fun. So, man, I bet your fellow law students were like, oh my God, I can't believe you just pulled that out on stage.
It's fun.
You're like, oh, I've never done it before.
Yeah, it's fun.
I'm just naturally good.
It was good times. It was a great time.
Have there been any experiences that you've had along the way that have been, sort of tough? Like maybe the world of entertainment can be murky and yucky. Has there ever been a time when you thought, I want to do law for someone easier? Or
yeah. So the thing for me is I help. I don't really help studios. I don't help, the man. I help more so, the single, the solo artist, so I haven't felt that way because I really feel passionate about helping those type of people. So I haven't felt that, okay, oh my gosh, no, this is miserable. I feel miserable. So no, I haven't felt that way.
Wow, that's great. Where's your main office located? Where are people?
I'm a virtual law firm.
Oh, great.
Yeah, it's a virtual law firm. But my base is in New York City.
Oh, okay, great. I was like, can artists from everywhere work with you?
Absolutely.
Oh, okay,
Absolutely,
great.
Yeah.
So you have the ability to work in any state?
Yeah,
that's wonderful.
The issues are the same for most people, and then they're pretty much the same for most artists and most type of creative people.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I just thought you had to, like, take a different, like, bar exam for every state.
You don't have to. Like, when it comes to that, it's very interesting. California has really interesting rules, but, like, in general, you don't have to do that.
Oh, well, great. Mm-hmm. So you're able to help people all over. Are you currently helping people all over the country?
I have clients in different places, yes.
Oh, my goodness. That's so great. Thank God they have you.
Yes.
There must be so many issues that you're sort of fighting the uphill battle for them. They don't even know what to do.
Right.
How do people find you? Like,
so you can find me, just a backtrack too, like, there are ethical rules I have to follow when I have work with people from other places. Just that, just have to sometimes associate with council located in that state. So certain states are more strict, so just to put that out there. But you can find me by going to my website at jllaw.net. That's JLLAW.net. You can find me on Instagram. I have 2 pages, Wizard Lawyer and Jean-Louis Law.
Grace.
I'm a lawyer because, I'm like Merlyne like the wizard. I'm a lawyer.
Oh, great. I love it.
So I just like, oh my gosh, you're so arrogant. I'm like, no, it's like Merlyne like the wizard. Like, come on. Like,
you're like, I do magic. That's what happens.
Exactly. And yes, you can find me. You can actually just also Google my name. It's very unique, and you'll find me. Yeah.
Awesome. Now, you're here with me at Podfest 2020.
I've been seeing you hosting. You did amazing.
Oh, you're very sweet. I appreciate that. What brought you to Podfest? Yeah. Do you have clients here, or did you just want to meet new people?
I'm actually speaking. I have a panel. I'm speaking on a panel tomorrow.
Oh, about law for podcasters.
Yes.
Oh, thank God you're here. So many people need that kind of thing. You don't even think about it.
You don't. And that's the thing. A lot of people think they need lawyers when they have a problem, but they don't think that they have to be proactive and talk to one to prevent problems from occurring.
Huh. Yeah. So what kind of, without giving away what's happening in your panel, because, everyone should pay money to get to hear you speak.
Yeah.
But, like, what are the things that, podcasters need to look out for, or what are the things that are, sort of the most issues that they have to deal with that they would need your help for?
Yeah, so whenever someone is having a podcast, they're running a business. And so whenever you're doing that, you just have to be aware of certain issues related to just contracts, intellectual property. Like, there's just so many things that can go wrong. I mean, I don't want to think they will go wrong, but my job is to think about the worst case scenario and to advise and how to hedge that risk. So,
yeah. Absolutely. I suppose there is a lot to worry about when you're just putting everything out on the internet without any protection.
Yes.
Yeah, we don't exactly have to get copyrighted like a book or a screenplay or anything. Interesting. That is that. Yeah, I wonder. Great. Okay. Awesome. Man, I am learning so much at this festival. Thank you so much, Merlyne, for being with me and for sharing about what your part is in the creative world. Yeah. It is certainly a job that I hadn't thought about before when it came to what creative people need, but they really do need help when it comes to legal matters. So thank you so much for helping us out.
Yes, thanks for having me. One more thing, my website has a free checklist of just issues that you should think about when running a business, so visit my website.
Oh, yes! All right, I got to turn this off so I can go to the website right now.
Thanks.
Thank you, Kris Keppeler, for being on the podcast, and thank you for coming out to Podfest. Glad that you're here.
Oh, I'm glad I'm here too. It's been great so far. Yeah.
Awesome. So we connected over your creativity. Tell me, what inspired you first in life to get involved in the arts?
Song. My dad loved to sing in church only. And so that inspired me to get started in choir in junior high. Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right. So you started as a singer.
I started as a singer.
In a band now, or how did that develop over the course of your life? Did you continue to work in music, or did that lead to other performances?
Yeah, actually, throughout high school and then into junior college, I continued to sing in choir and enjoyed that. And then I graduated, and choir got a little boring.
Sure.
It was like, okay, standing up here in a black dress. Okay, this is kind of boring. And so when I was in my 30s, a blind date took me to a Gilbert and Sullivan production. And lo and behold, in the program it said, we're looking for chorus members. And I'm like, well, that might be more fun than standing around in a choir. And so I auditioned without a resume, without a headshot for their next production. It was just a little local community, GNS company. And they cast me as a fairy in Iolanthe. And so I was in the chorus. And it was like, whoa, this is way more fun.
Yeah, you made it. You were on stage.
On stage.
You're moving.
Yeah,
maybe
moving,
not a black dress.
Not a black, no. It was a little fairy costume with wings.
Yeah. Way more fun.
Yeah, way more fun.
Man, I could see how that would lead you into a fun path at that point.
Yeah, so it was like, oh, this is really fun. And then I did another production, chorus, and it's like, I'm going to continue doing this. Except, I want to be up front.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that led to acting classes.
Oh, cool. So you started getting involved in acting, like you said, in your 30s, and then you jumped into acting classes. How did you even find them? It's so hard for adults to find education sometimes. Where were the classes?
I was really lucky because there was a local theater school.
Oh.
And they were highly recommended. Wonderful place. I met wonderful teachers, got great training there. That's where I got started. So I was really lucky that there was a local theater school.
What was the name of the school?
It's Freehold.
Freehold?
Freehold Theater in Seattle, yep. They're actually still there.
Good. Go take classes there, guys. Listen.
Yeah.
It's a spot for you.
They're great. So that got me started, and I kept rolling with it. I just kept rolling with it. I got into straight acting because I enjoyed that. And
straight acting meaning acting in a play, not in a musical.
In a play, not musical.
Yep.
I did keep singing. Actually, I started opera training.
Ooh.
Yeah, and learned to sing opera.
Wow.
And that was really fun. I have to say, of all the things I've done, opera has to be the very hardest.
Oh, yeah?
Because you have to do not only at least some acting, you have to do all that vocal gymnastics, you have to get to where you need to be on the stage, and you have to watch the conductor all at the same time.
It's a lot of stuff.
It's a huge amount of stuff. So,
wow.
So that was, my opera training was really great. It helped in my just general acting training, and
wow.
So yeah, that was, and I traveled to Graz, Austria, and Spoleto, Italy for specialized training in opera.
Oh, so cool!
Yeah, it was really cool.
Oh,
and then I met a teacher from New York City in Italy, and I ended up actually taking some lessons in New York City from him. More opera. That's where I actually finished my opera training. They did the finishing work on my opera training, and by that time I was too old for opera.
So like you took the training and you were enjoying being part of it, but then when you tried to enact it in the real world, there just wasn't a space for you to go?
There wasn't a space for me to go.
Who told you that, though? Like, did you try to audition and you just didn't get it, or was there a person who was like, oh, sweetheart, no, you can't do it?
Yeah,
New Yorkers can be like that sometimes.
Yeah, no, they were very encouraging, but it's just, especially the sopranos. I'm a typical soprano. So unless you got this boom bob voice and got somebody that's pushing you from behind, it's really it's difficult.
Yeah.
But I am not unhappy with what I did.
But you had a wonderful experience.
It was wonderful. Yes, and it was wonderful training actually for the voiceover that I do now.
Oh, great.
Every time I
segue.
step in front of the mic, I'm using my singing skills every time. Especially doing audiobooks where you're in front of the mic for hours.
Yeah.
The singing skills come in. Oh,
absolutely.
They're great.
Wow, that's actually a really good tip for people doing voiceovers, to maybe take a voiceover class just to work on developing their vocal register.
Yeah. Or take a singing class. Actually, a lot of voice actors have had singing lessons. It really helps a lot, especially learning where to pitch your voice if you're doing characters and stuff like that.
Ooh, smart.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man, you don't think about that kind of stuff, you know? But that is so smart. Of course, in an audiobook, you're not just one character, you're all the characters.
Yes.
Oh man, that just like literally my mind is like blown just thinking about that. Like, yes, of course, because legitimately I've even interviewed vocal coaches, and they were just working with actors to help them develop their range, you know, so that they could project and stuff like that in a safe way.
Yeah.
But the idea of literally, because also I do a lot of comedy, to get a vocal coach to help you do different voices would be amazing. Like, that is such a smart idea. Oh, so cool. Okay, so listen, but you're so business, like you're so into it, and clearly you've got some sweet, sweet connections because you're going to Italy, you're doing in New York, you're learning all this stuff.
Yeah.
How did you then transition from the opera times into the voiceover and acting that you do now? Like, what did you do? How'd you find an agent? Did you already have an agent? That part's kind of the hardest part, I think.
Yeah, I actually got an agent fairly quickly in my acting because I got into film, and I still enjoy film work. And in fact, right now I probably do more film work than anything else. You know, film and video.
And you're still in Seattle?
I'm still in Seattle.
So there's a lot of film available up there for you, or are you traveling?
Not really. It's more corporate video, industrial video, stuff like that.
Still, that's awesome.
Last year I booked 2 training videos, corporate training videos.
Great.
And then a featured extra in a TV series.
Yeah.
It's like we have a local producer in the area, in the Seattle area, Megan Griffiths, and she regularly is down in LA pitching her production company. And so she's starting to bring, you know, she brought a new TV series up to Seattle. And so, of course, all the supporting stuff are all local Seattle actors.
That's so awesome. Yeah. Man, how great that you guys have this person in your town that's like literally going out there and trying to get work for you.
Yep.
Oh, man, I wish we all had one of those. I mean, that's a great opportunity. Goodness. So you're working now, you're doing voiceover and film. But, you know, a lot of times, you know, work, unless you're Brad Pitt, you really can't be paying rent with the money that you're making, right?
No.
So what do you do to keep it going, even though it's hard in your life, even though we all have to do, you know, various other jobs potentially to make it happen? How do you stay with it even when it's hard?
Well, I went to working part-time in the corporate world.
Oh, great.
And that worked for a while. And then after I got laid off for the umpteenth time, by that time I had saved up enough money to say, okay, no more. I could sort of retire now. I don't want to. I don't want to retire on this little amount of money, but actually it's a fair amount at this point.
Sure.
Because I was good at saving up. I saved up.
That's smart.
So then I saved up, and so it's like, oh, well, now I can concentrate on what I really want to do. And in the meantime, while I was working part-time, I was working part-time on voiceover and, you know, the acting stuff. So I was keeping, you know, doing both. It was hard. Mm-hmm. It's been much easier at this point to, once I quit even the part-time job, to just, you know, concentrate on it full-time. And I find myself being an entrepreneur. It's like what, you know, looking especially in voiceover and the audiobook, what else can I do? And I regularly network at women's business groups. And then I met a friend who introduced me to a friend who actually lives here in Florida, who's an author's coach, who said, oh, I want someone who knows what they're doing, and you came recommended to me, and I want to recommend you to my authors, but I want you to help them with self-narration. And I said, oh, well, that would be fun. And so now I'm working on this new part of my business. I've expanded that. I actually haven't had to work with any of her authors, but I started contacting more author coaches, and I've run into many of them who said, oh, I don't know anything about audiobooks, and I sure don't want to know anything, but I've got authors with questions. and they're handing them off to me.
Wow.
So I'm just getting that business rolling, but I have done one coaching session with an author who wanted to self-narrate. She's a speaker, she's a stunt woman, she's an actress herself, she's even done a little voiceover. It's like, you don't really need to hire a narrator to do your book. You can do that. But she still doesn't know. She says, I don't even know where to start. I don't know the pitfalls, because there's a lot of pitfalls in audiobooks. And so yeah, just, and I'm here because it's, what else can I do with my podcast, which I really enjoy doing, but is there a way to monetize that,
Yeah, figuring it out.
Doing stuff that I really love. So it's, becoming an entrepreneur with my creative stuff, because that's I love to create. Love to narrate and create, and tell stories. Yeah.
Man, that is so inspiring. Like you decided to break out on your own, and then bit by bit, these little opportunities have come together. Thank you so much for sharing this with my audience and with me. Yeah. It is opening my mind to a lot of different ways to use audio, to use the skills that I already have, that I'm sure my audience has. I didn't know there were people that needed this help. How can I help them, right? And make money and make a living where I don't have to, deal with the 9 to 5 or whatever other business you don't want to work in. That is really interesting. Awesome. Oh, wow. Thank you, Kris Keppeler, for being with us, for sharing your stories, and, thank you, everybody, for listening.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Harry Duran, for being on the podcast. I appreciate you taking time out of Podfest insanity to chat.
Thanks for having me, Amy. I think podcast conferences are a super fun place to be, but also super hectic when you're trying to organize things like this. And I always see people I see people in the hallways doing interviews, and I'm like, oh, that would be nice. And obviously I brought my microphone as well, but I don't know. You get so excited when you see friends, and having been podcasting since 2014, these things become like family reunions for me. So.
Yeah, which is a great thing for sure.
Yeah. The good part about family reunions, not the awkward part.
Yeah. Nobody's coming in with weird stories about you're terrible.
Why don't you call me?
It must be extra difficult for you, though, because you're doing a podcast about podcasters. So people must be coming at you interview me. I'm a great host.
Yeah. So my show, for the benefit of your listener, is Podcast Junkies. Super Meta started in 2014. It's a podcast where I interview other podcasters. But now it's expanded a little bit to interview luminaries in the podcasting space, so people who own podcasting companies or who've created cool podcasting tools. And I do 1-hour video conversations, so it's a nice way to just build up relationships and network with other podcasters, and also have my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the podcasting space. So yes, when you go to a podcasting conference and you tell people your show's about podcasters, immediately they say, well, I have a podcast.
Yeah.
You should interview me. I'm I don't know who you are, and if your show's any good. And
Right? Absolutely. Plus, there's so many out there that, I'm sure you have a certain vibe that you're going through. Even as you flow through your interviews, you're okay, well, I've talked to a bunch of people that did science stuff, so now I need to try something else, or now I need to talk to people in this side of the country, or not in this country, opening yourself up to whatever you're interested in. So how did you get into that?
Well, it's interesting. I always tell the long story or the short version, but either way, they end up telling the same story. I was in corporate America for over 15 years. I worked at JP Morgan Chase and E-Trade, so legit corporate jobs in the marketing department. But I grew up with a passion for electronic music, house music. I grew up DJing vinyl, turntables. I still have my turntables in storage, the Technics 1200s. Learned how to beat match, and it was just probably when they ask you what's your dream job, if you could get paid to do anything you love, I'd just be a globe-trotting DJ.
Yeah.
It'd be so fun. And so I had an idea to start a podcast because I had a mobile app that I created with a friend called Know Your DJ. Sort of like a Pandora, but just for electronic music. So you would look at the app and it would just be DJs. Because we'd go to festivals and I just wouldn't know, I would know the DJ by name, but I wouldn't know his face because I just knew all his sets and by his music. So created Know Your DJ with a friend, and then I went to New Media Expo in 2014 because I was going to start a podcast. And I realized how hard it was going to be to interview globetrotting DJs. So I was like, let's scratch that. But I saw Pat Flynn there, Amy Porterfield, some of these bigger podcasters in the entrepreneurial space. And I sort of shifted gears. I also studied acting when I was in New York for a little bit. So I was a fan of Inside the Actor Studio. And also, quick rest in R.I.P. James Lipton just passed away as of this recording a couple of days ago.
Oh my gosh, I know. I was so sad about it. I was like, who is going to ask the real questions? No one.
Yeah, exactly.
Seriously.
What was fascinating about that show is like, I would always... It was nice to see like the actor in a different light, where they just like had their hair down, they were relaxed, they weren't trying to like perform, and he had them like asking these funny questions that just would show a nicer side of them. So it always stuck with me, and I always enjoyed watching those interviews. And so when I started Podcast Junkies, I was like, I kind of want to be like that, like inside the podcaster studio. I don't know.
Yeah.
So I grabbed the name Podcast Junkies. The domain was available, which is a miracle. And then I just proceeded to start interviewing podcasters, and I would just ask them. We start as the starting point is that they have a podcast, but then it just, it could just rabbit hole into anything they talk about. So I've talked about like people who have like other vinyl collections and other people who had other hobbies, and I just like kind of pull the threads as the conversation goes. And the beauty of a hour-long conversation is you do have the flexibility to just dive deeper, and inevitably, like when podcasters finish, they're like, wow, I've never told that story before, or no one's ever asked me that before. And obviously as a podcaster, like those are things you want to hear. So I always try to just keep that as the focus. And I just released episode 214. So it's been going, and this is the 6th year of Podcast Junkies. So it's been a wild ride. And because of podcasting, I've met literally like a whole group of people that are now friends that I would not have known otherwise.
Yeah, plus you really have a finger on the pulse of this like new media. Like it's a brand new world out there. My husband's always talking about its connection to the broadcasting world and how like they're only just getting into, podcasting is a real important thing. Like we should get involved. Like every radio station in Austin anyway has like every DJ has their own podcast so that it's like more content. But they're right, because they'll get audience. The podcast audience are potentially not listening to the regular terrestrial radio, so they could get them in either way, right? I'm listening to terrestrial radio and going like, I'll listen to her podcast.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of a wild kind of field. What do you think for you has been the driving force in keeping you going and keeping you doing it when I'm sure it's a lot of work for you. You do a lot of traveling. You're at every podcast festival. I was like, I follow you on Facebook. I see you are everywhere. Like, how do you maintain that, like, monetarily and, like, just in life when it's like, I'm sure you have hard days and you've got an interview and you're like, I don't want to talk. What do you do when you hit the hard times?
Well, it's interesting because when I think about the interviews that I set up, there's rarely an interview with someone that I haven't developed a relationship with before. So as you might imagine, going to a conference, I get connected, and obviously you're going to make it on Podcast Junkies now, and we're going to make sure we get that scheduled. But it's just a result of...
I swear I didn't do that on purpose.
But I swear, but it's funny because the conversation is just going to be more natural. And so when we speak on Podcast Junkies, it's just a continuation of this conversation. Like, remember Podfest? And the excitement that I have, like that hour that I get to speak to those people and those friends is one of the best highlights of my day, because I'm following up on the bar conversation. I'm following up on the hallway conversation. I'm just like, let's take this deeper. Let me bring you onto my show. I'm scratching my own itch. I'm talking essentially to friends and developing friendships. And sometimes it's a way for me to like spend a quiet hour. As much as I would like to do that in a podcasting conference, I can't when there's like 1,000 or 2,000 people in attendance. Even my closest podcasting friends. So it's a great opportunity for me to just be like, hey, Amy, let's like slow down and like let me catch up, because I bet you I'll learn more about you in that hour, than I'm able to do in these one-off conversations at podcasting conferences. So that's the majority. And then having a platform and a brand like Podcast Junkies now, I have people like contacting me through the website. I had Andrew Mason, who's the former CEO of Groupon, who basically like, has no problem like reaching out to whoever he wants to. He started a new company called The Script, which is automated transcription. It's fascinating technology. if you want to edit a piece of audio, you just look at the written word on the screen. If you delete the word, it'll delete the audio. It's wild, yeah. They're empowering people who who don't have knowledge of like audio editors, because a lot of these folks coming into the podcasting space, they know how to use Google Docs, they know how to use Word, so they can edit a Word document, and so he wants to make it that easy for people to edit audio. He's democratizing podcast production, which I think is fascinating.
Wow.
So his people just reach out to me, and we've spoken already twice now. So I email them, and I've introduced them to like Guy Kawasaki, who I've met also through the podcast. It's just been a fascinating way to just have that platform, and I'm super high on the power of a podcast to grow your network. And so now to your question about like how I sustain it, is that this is not my business. Like I have a production company called Fullcast. We produce done-for-you podcasts from launch to production and marketing. That part gets a little like challenging, because as any entrepreneur knows, it's the hardest thing I've ever had to do in my life, when you're responsible for like the sales, the marketing, the website, the copywriting, like the socializing. So I try to make sure that I mix in an aspect of business when I'm on these conferences as well, and make sure, like I have a couple of clients that are going to be meeting me here at this conference, and just make sure at the very least that it's like net neutral from a cash flow perspective, and that you're not adding more expenses. But it's just a fascinating networking tool. We've just crossed over the 900,000 podcasts in Apple mark, which is crazy. In about a month and a half, we're going to hit 1 million podcasts in the Apple directory. So this is just a fascinating time to be in podcasting. And I think as much as people say we've had a couple of different resurgences in podcasting, I think we're due for another one, because as you probably can attest to, just more and more people are becoming aware of the power of the medium to connect. And you don't have to have like thousands of listeners. You really just need a couple of hundred of dedicated, loyal fans to build like your own little show and your own little radio station. So it's exciting.
Man, you must work so hard. That sounds like so much work that you're doing, but you're so like positive and full of energy every time I see you. And like I said, your web presence is great, because I'm always like, he's doing it, I can do it.
Yeah, it's interesting, because like, obviously when we're at a conference or we're online, we're showing our best face, and I always like to joke that I want someone to start like the Instagram feed of like the crappy parts of your day, like, oh, I just spilled coffee on my white pants, or I just I'm picking up dog poop, look at me picking up my dog's poop, like literally the stuff that like nobody talks about, like that's the day-to-day stuff, or like like I'm out of like laundry soap, like just like that totally like boring, but it's challenging sometimes, Amy, because people are just putting like their best face forward. And if you're struggling, or if you're going through some challenging times, and you see those people's feeds, you're just like, oh my God, like everybody lives in Bali, and they have an infinity pool. Oh my God, where's my infinity pool? Like, So I think it's just, just managing expectations, and just like I always tell people, like a horse, you have to have your blinders on, like what you want to do, like do you, like they say, right? And create your own, measurement for success, because if you try to measure against everybody else, well, none of us will measure up to some of these people, because that's all they do, and they get paid to be influencers. And it's just, I try to stay away from that, and I just try to show stuff that's like empowering, or just gets people excited, or just puts my clients or my a lot of my focus for the show is just putting my guests in the best light possible. I have a mantra that I say, you treat your guests like gold. And I've got people that are guests, that have been guests like year one, that I still have relationships with, because I never want that to seem like it's transactional. I know a lot of people like, oh, if I just get this person on my show, or if I just get this person. So I try to stay as humble as possible, and realize like without the community of friends and guests and clients, like I wouldn't be where I am today.
Oh, that's so great. Well, you've always been very warm every time I've met you. So you're doing a good job. You're doing exactly what you said. Thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time in the midst of the insanity of Podfest 2020. Thank you, Harry Duran, for being on the podcast.
Well, thanks, Amy, for having me on. I'm looking forward to having you on Podcast Junkies as well.
Yes.
Thanks for listening to Yes But Why Podcast. Check out all our episodes on yesbutwhypodcast.com, or check out all the content on our network, HC Universal, at hcuniversalnetwork.com.